Chapter 5, we are doing a whole lot with polynomials. So we're going to start with just kind of a bunch of definitions and examples that go along with these definitions. The first thing here that we're going to talk about is a monomial. What does mono mean? One. You guys are so smart. Monomial, the number one. So a monomial is a single term. Okay? That can be a number. It can be a variable. Or it can be the product of both. Okay, a number, a variable, or a product of both. Basically, what this looks like, oh my goodness. I'm going to move down to this standard form real quick because this is what I'm going to talk about. Not squared to the nth term. Your standard monomial form is ax to the nth power when this n is a counting number. Do you know what the counting numbers are?
1, 2, 3.
Right. If I said count to 10, you would start at 1, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the counting numbers. So we're going to talk about the degree of a monomial, and then we're going to do some examples of those. First thing, the degree is the exponent of the variable. Okay, which begs the question, what do you do if there is no variable? If there is no variable, then your degree is 0. Does that look like a 0?
No.
I'll make it better. Okay, if there is no variable, your degree is 0. Okay, so I'm going to give you some examples of monomials, and then we're going to talk about their degree. Our first monomial is 7, okay? We call that a constant. If you've ever heard of a constant before, we'll get more into that in a little bit. Another monomial would be 3x. That is a monomial. It is one term, okay? Another monomial would be negative 10x to the 6th. Another monomial would be 1/3 x squared. And another monomial would be 5 to the 4th. Okay, so now here's my question. The degree. We said the degree is the exponent of the variable, and if there is no variable, your degree is 0. So what is the degree of the monomial 7?
0.
0. There's no variable, right? This is 0. Bo, you're going to want to know this stuff. Like, really know it. You should take notes on it. What's the second one here? What's the degree of, so this is a degree of 0. What's the degree of this guy, 3x? It's 1. Okay? Basically, you're thinking of this as x to the first power, right? A degree of 1. Okay. What's the degree of this next guy? 6. X to the 6th power. What's the degree of this guy? 2. What's the degree of this guy? Good job. It's a trick question, right? Everyone goes, oh, it's 4, because your exponent's 4. But where's your variable? It doesn't exist, right? So your degree is 0, because 5 to the 4th power, I don't even know, what is 5 to the 4th power? 125 times 5, 725? I don't know. Okay, so those are the degrees, okay? Let me just show you, I'm going to show you 3 things that are not monomials that might look to some like a monomial. The first one, you cannot have a variable in your denominator. okay? And I'm just going to write that so you know why I'm saying this isn't. No variable in the denominator, okay? That is not a monomial. We're going to keep going here. Not a monomial would be x to the negative 6th power. Negative 6 is not a counting number. You cannot have a negative exponent in a monomial, okay? And then the last one that is not is the square root of 3x. You cannot have the square root symbol, okay? So those are not monomials. Your standard form for a monomial is this: a times x to the nth power. Any questions so far? Okay, so that leads us to polynomial. What does poly mean? Poly means many. Okay, which is kind of a trick phrase, prefix, I guess you would say, because it doesn't have to be many, but it can be many. A polynomial is by definition a monomial or the sum or difference of monomials. So if you add monomials together or you subtract them, you get a polynomial. But you can also just have one monomial, and that is considered a polynomial. So the sum or difference of monomials. Okay? Okay. When we talk about the degree of a polynomial, this is slightly different because now you're going to have multiple variables involved. Your degree is your largest exponent of any of the monomials. Okay, so if you took all of your monomials together to make a polynomial, the one that has the largest degree is the degree of your polynomial. Okay, the largest exponent, I guess is a better way to say that. Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple examples of polynomials, and then we're going to talk degree with those as well. So you're going to want to do a little bit of spacing here, just so you can separate them. So one polynomial might be 2x plus 3. Okay. What would the degree of that polynomial be? It's 1, right? X to the first power. So your degree is 1. Okay. Another polynomial. Let's say I have 9x to the 5th minus 3x plus 1. What's the degree of that polynomial? That would be 5, right? Your largest exponent is the 5. Okay. How about x to the 3rd minus 10 plus 8x squared plus 5x minus 7x to the 4th. Okay, your degree on that one, it's the largest exponent to our variable, which is the 4. Okay, so that is a degree of 4. Questions on that so far? All right. So standard form of a polynomial, basically what you're trying to do is put your exponents in descending order. What is descending? Going down, okay? So we're going to take our exponents and put them in descending order. This is messy, sorry. Okay, exponents in descending order. Then we have what's called the leading coefficient. And the leading coefficient is exactly what it sounds like. Do you know what a coefficient is?
The number next to the variable.
The number that comes in front of the variable. Okay, the leading coefficient is the one in front of the first variable in standard form. So it's the number in front.
We're stupid.
What?
That was on the, what was it, PSA2 or something? Or no?
Oh, was
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, and we didn't know that. So everybody on the math section just got that wrong.
Oh, that's not what I was like.
What were you like?
I don't know.
All right, it's the number in front of the first variable in standard form. So it has to be in standard form for this, and I'm going to show you right now what standard form is. Standard form means that your variables are going in descending order. So if we take that blue example up here, and we put that into standard form, what comes first?
7x to the 4th.
Close.
Minus 7.
Negative 7x to the 4th.
Oh my.
That's very important.
But.
We still took it.
Okay, negative 7x to the 4th. Why are 4s so hard for me on the iPad? Okay, negative 7x to the 4th. Okay, so that's this one. Then what?
Plus x to the 3rd.
Plus x to the 3rd.
Plus 8x to the 2. Plus 5x. Minus 10.
Plus 8x squared. Plus 5x minus 10. Don't forget to pay attention to your signs there.
What's that?
Okay, so notice we went 4, 3, 2, 1, none with our exponents. Okay, so what is the leading coefficient then?
I don't know what that means.
Negative
Negative 7.
It's negative 7. It's the number in front of the first variable in standard form. So your very first thing, the leading number, right? The leading coefficient is negative 7. Okay? Okay. So then what we're going to do is we're going to have to classify these different polynomials that we have by different things. So I'm going to lay this out for you 2 different ways. The first way is we will classify by the degree. The second way is we will classify it by the number of terms that it has. Okay? So I'm just going to I'm going to draw a little dotted line here. Let's do this. If our degree is 0, do you remember what I called that?
Constant.
It's the constant, okay? If the degree is 0, that is constant. Okay, so an example of that would be the number 10. 10 is a constant, okay? I'm going to do this actually so I can write neater for you. If my degree is 1, so let me give you the example and see if you can help me come up with what this would be. So an example of a degree of 1 would be 2x minus 5. Do you know what we call that? If you were to graph that, what would you get? A line. We call 1 linear, okay? Because you get a straight line when you graph it. Okay, if the degree is 2, you should know this one because we've done a lot of these. You'd get a parabola. What formula did we use to solve x squared plus 3x minus 4?
Quadratic.
The quadratic formula, right? This is a quadratic.
I knew it wasn't the standard.
Okay, so a quadratic would be something like negative 3x squared plus 1, right? If there's an x squared as your highest exponent, that is a quadratic. All right, when you take something to the 3rd power, we say you cube it. This is a cubic. So if I have 5x cubed plus 2x squared plus x minus 3, that's a cubic. Okay? If you take something to the 4th power, think dollars here. For what make a dollar? Quarters. For what in a gallon of milk? Quarts, right? So 4 is quartic. Just be careful with this because so many people think quad and think 4, right? But the degree of 2 is the quadratic. Degree of 4 is a quartic. Okay? And then the fifth one, and this is where we stop naming by degrees here. The fifth is, oh, sorry, I didn't give you an example of a quartic. This would be 7x to the fourth plus 3x, for example. Fifth is quintic. Like quintuplets would be 5 babies. Lord bless those people. So negative 10x to the fifth plus 3x squared minus x. Okay? How are we doing? So far, so good? How did I make them? I just made them up. Yeah, I'm just giving you an example of a quintic and a, yeah, there's lots of examples. That's just one. Okay. Next side is we can classify by the number of terms. This one, I feel like you probably know these already. Maybe not, but I feel like you should. Okay, so if we have one term, what do we call it? I just did this at the very top. Monomial, right? One is a monomial. So one term, or a monomial, could be something like this, 5x cubed. That's a monomial. If you have two terms, what do we call that? Remember when we did factoring, it's like 2x plus 3 and 5x minus 1. What is this called? 2. Binomial. 2 is a binomial. Okay, so something like 7x to the fifth plus 3 is a binomial. It has two terms to it. Okay? 3 terms. What do you think you call that one? Mono, bi, and trinomial. Okay? So a trinomial might be x squared minus x minus 6. You've seen a lot of trinomials in the last chapter. Okay? If there are 4 or more terms, we just go very basic and call it a polynomial. Okay? Technically, 1 through 3 are polynomials too, though. It's just more specifically, it's a monomial, binomial, trinomial. Any questions on that? All right, let's do some. You're going to do this for me. We're going to fill in this chart. Standard form of 17x would be? 17x, right. What is the leading coefficient? 17. What is the degree of that? I almost told you next answer. A degree of 1, right? X to the first power. Can you name this for me in terms of the degree? It's linear, right? You would get a straight line if we did this. So this is linear. And then the name based on the number of terms? Monomial. Okay, number 2. In standard form, how would this write?
4x cubed.
Ah, yes, good work. These are both x cubes, right? So it'd be 4x cubed. You always want to simplify. Plus 5. What is the leading coefficient? 4, that number out in front. What is the degree of this polynomial? Largest exponent? 3. Okay, so a degree of 3 is called a, if you say take something to the third power, stop it. You're supposed to be taking notes. It is a cubic. And 2 terms? Binomial. Okay. Next one. Standard form would be what? Careful with negatives.
Negative 3x to the fifth minus 5x.
You should have it in front of you while you're taking notes.
My iPad is dead.
Negative 3x to the fifth minus 5x cubed plus 2. Okay, leading coefficient? Negative 3. Degree? 5. which we call a 5 babies, quintuplets. It's a quintic. Okay? And that is what in terms of the number of terms? Trinomial. Okay? All right, now these ones are a little fancier. We're going to move down here to lay this out. X plus 2 squared is this, right? X plus 2 times x plus 2. If you remember the little shortcut, you're welcome to do it, but 90% of people never do, so I'm going to FOIL this for you. X squared plus 2x plus 2x plus 4, so that's x squared plus 4x plus 4, right? And then we got to be real careful here. We're subtracting, so minus, and then we got to FOIL this. X minus 2 times x plus 6 would be x squared plus 6x minus 2x minus 12. Okay, again, simplify that. Put this whole thing in parentheses because we're subtracting the whole thing, okay? So in parentheses, x squared plus 4x minus 12. Okay, now we simplify. What do you get? What's x squared minus x squared? 0. What's 4x minus 4x? 0. What's 4 minus a negative 12? 16, right? So that is your standard form. That whole thing comes out to 16. Isn't that crazy? It's kind of crazy. Okay, so what's your leading coefficient? Technically, it's the 16. There's no variable, but 16 is your leading coefficient. What's your degree? 0. Making it a what? Constant. And what? Nomial. Monomial, right? One term. All right, and then this last one, if we simplify that, again, we're subtracting. X cubed minus x cubed goes away. You only have one x squared here. Be careful. What do we know about that x squared? It's negative, right? Because it's basically saying 0 minus x squared. So that's a negative x squared. So that we're done with that. Then what? We did our x cubes. We did our x squared. What's next? Shh. Pay attention. We're doing this. Plus 2x. So that's done. And then you have 4 minus 4. That is 0. So this is your setup. That's standard form. What's your leading coefficient? Negative 1, right? It's like there's a negative 1 out in front. What's your degree? 2. So this is a... You did a lot of these with that formula. That's a quadratic. Oops, that's an A. And it is a binomial. Sorry, I kind of made a mess of the end of that. Any questions on that?